Note rescued at the last minute, which is so good. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Lovely to meet you all.
Are you sitting next to me?
Hi, everyone.
Just before lunch, you can tell.
Do you want water?
Restless.
Whoops. Water?
We're in between you and lunch.
Okay, I'll do a real quick kind of rundown on intros because we've got 5 industry superstars here, plus myself. Martyn Bentley, you guys put hands up. Martyn Bentley, Commercial Director at Audience Project. Graeme Lynch, VP Demand EMEA at Magnite. Vicky Fox, legend, Chief Planning Officer, OMD UK. Pieter Vervoort, is incredibly bad pronunciation.
Almost there.
VP of Entertainment Products at Liberty Global, fellow telco. And Stéphane Coruble, CEO of RTL Ad Alliance. Thank you guys for coming along. We had a little kind of catch up about a week or so ago. These guys can talk, so hopefully you'll kind of hear very little from me. I kind of wanted to start because we'll start with like a protagonist kind of thing, I think, because we've heard some great presentations from the 4 previous speakers, and I think you really get a sense that total video, total TV, whatever we want to call it, is coming together. And this might be an odd one because I'm going to ask the audience participation here. Kind of hands up, and might not be able to see. Who thinks total TV is a thing? Is it actually a thing in the industry, or is it made up bullshit? Okay, I think, right. Okay, so there's some work to be done by the industry, I think, in terms of that. Panel, what do you guys think? Where do you guys start on total TV? Is it a thing?
I think because I've been planning and buying telly since the 80s, when it was...
Get out of there.
Yes, when it was ITV and Channel 4. It's just every step there's a new thing, and every year there's a platform, there's a different content provider, there's a different way of doing things, and there's all the measurement that we'll go into later that's associated with that. And we just keep having to remember that we are still in kind of, trying to bring everything together in one ecosystem like we always have. I think that's what I'd say.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say definitely there is a total TV video world, but it's not in the advertising space. It's in the user space. And I think that's where probably the biggest challenge is the fact that if you was to talk to everyone in this room, anyone who's got kids or anyone at any level, the average user will not differentiate what platform they're watching on, how they're watching it. They actually look for content. And I've got a 5-year-old stepdaughter. She uses Siri. She goes on to Siri. She basically says, I want to watch Bluey. She doesn't care where it is. She will just watch that. And I think for her, that is total video, and she doesn't know that's total video. And then, obviously an older kid might be looking at TikTok. And I think really what we've got to understand as advertisers, as technology, as whatever component we are in the ecosystem, is that we need to understand that that's how the user is viewing our world, and we need to meet that. And I think it's a yes and a no sort of answer.
Great answer, yes or no, love it.
I was actually going to say quite a lot of what Graeme just said, so can you come to me first? But yeah, it's definitely a thing in terms of the consumers, but also I think the customers we work with, which are either brands or broadcasters or CTV aggregators and whatnot. They need to prove it. So one of our customers has a product called Total TV, so it's 100% a thing. But yeah, what is this thing? We'll probably get into that in a minute. But it's a complicated thing. I think, what was it the lady from CBS said earlier, Radu? I thought she was brilliant, and she was talking about how TV is booming, no doubt. You just got to add it up differently. And that's the problem with the thing, I think, right now.
Well, I think this is not a thing. We are in the middle of it. I think TV for the RTL group has been always total video. We renamed this acronym a few years ago already, and I can tell you I'm 150% convinced that it is something real. The digital transformation, we're talking about this for so many years. We're in the middle of it. Everything is about video. Everything is about streaming. So it has some issues. It has some challenges ahead, of course, for broadcasters like us or for other players like platforms or streamers. But at the end of the day, it is a real thing. I think it's a hyper-dynamic industry at the moment. It's so sexy to be part of it. really. And yes, TV, total video is really a thing, for sure.
Sexy TV.
Yeah, well, you said we are in the middle of it. I'm not sure if we are halfway. Maybe we just started on the journey, and I think for a lot of consumers it's still very confusing, right? We're adding apps and apps and apps, and how many pluses do there still need to come before consumers get to the right content? So I think we're on our way, but it's still a little bit of chaos out there.
Okay, well, the kind of job of this panel is to, let's see if we can deliver on that kind of vision I put out at the start, which is to accelerate what is this thing called total video and total TV. So let's start with maybe the kind of buying ecosystem at the left-hand side of it, if you'll bear with me, with the clients, the advertisers and the agencies. And Vicky, you're probably well placed to kind of have a view on this. Do we think the problems and challenges are there? You know, is there integration there, or is it silos? Is it naming conventions? Is it preset budgets and briefs? Like,
it's not without challenges, and I think as agencies we've got to make sure that we have organised ourselves to reflect the market and the consumers, and to make sure that our clients are giving us total holistic briefs that we can respond in a holistic way, and then that helps, you know, if we start that conversation off at the beginning. We created a department last year called Connected Performance, where we brought together media planning expertise with biddable teams. So essentially it's one big operational team that can consider briefs, activations, audiences, data through the funnel, so they can, you know, consider brand and performance in one solution. And I think that helps when clients see that helps them sort of frame their mindset, and I think that faces out into the industry really neatly. And because our job is not to create any more complexity for our clients, it is to make this, we should soak up the complexity and organise ourselves in the right way so that we get the most effective results for our clients.
Yeah. Graeme, I like the comment you made about audiences, and they kind of, you know, they'll find it, they'll make it work, and the audience is usually right. So where is it going wrong for you?
Really interesting question, and I probably would have had a very different answer, but I was at a Beat TV event yesterday and saw one of the most interesting panels I've ever seen, where there was a huge amount of sort of, let's say, disagreement on what are the issues around total video and the future of total video, and how you compare one piece of content with another piece of content. And I think what probably has changed my mind from yesterday to today from that conversation is the fact that agencies and clients are really trying to understand this world, right? And if you look at it from an advertiser perspective, the whole point of any advertising campaign, no matter what anyone says, is to understand, I've got an outcome and I want to achieve that outcome. Yeah, and that's the simple definition of a good campaign. And so what's now happening is, because we've got this fragmentation, because we've got all of this within the media ecosystem, that is becoming harder and harder to understand. And the problem is you've then got different sort of stakeholders within that ecosystem, which have different sort of setups, let's say, or histories. And I'll sort of split it into two areas, and I don't mean to waffle on here, but you've got, in my opinion, you've got these traditional media players who they've very much got legacy media to sell, yeah? But then you've got this whole new ecosystem, which in probably the last 10, 15 years, the TikTok, the Facebook, you know, the Samsungs who you've just heard from, and people like that, who they, in some respects, are fortunate. They've come into a digital world, and they can embrace the digital world much easier because of that. But then you've also got these legacy platforms who, let's be fair, TV still drives your incremental, your reach at a much higher level than any other media, yeah? And a much better impact. But they're still working in a world where they're having to work in a linear world and then having to transform themselves into a digital world. And so that in itself creates conflict. And I think that in itself is the barrier, and I think that will change over time. And I think and this is my own opinion, is what is needed is for advertisers to suddenly realise that they need to use innovation, they need to use creativity to maybe think differently than standards when it comes to measurement, and actually work with their agency or work with their technology partners, even work with their supply partners to say, look, I'm an auto client. I'm going to have different outcomes to someone who is a traditional retail client. And I'm then going to build my ecosystem for myself, whether it's measurement, delivery, activation, optimization, which is going to be made for me. And I think that is something that no one has ever done before. Everyone just goes, well, I'm going to do that way because that's what everyone else does as well. And I think that sort of is the biggest challenge and then the biggest opportunity as well.
Martyn, do you want to dig in there?
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. What we've seen with the brands that we work with is I think there's a lot of industry initiatives going on and they're moving forward, but they're not necessarily all going at the pace that the brands want, because they want some insight or business advantage now through understanding what's happening in this marketplace. So the ones that we've worked with for maybe 3 years plus, they've decided to work it out themselves. So they've kind of set a formula and said, I don't know, the most important thing might be reach to start with, because if the total addressable audience doesn't know about your product, you're never going to sell the max number of products. So they'll start by addressing just, what is the cross-channel reach? Then they'll start thinking, okay, is all reach equal? And start to maybe bring proxies in for attention or something like that to then equivalate, I don't know if that's the word, to make an equivalence between, linear TV and reach on newer CTV formats and channels or YouTube or whatever. And so they sort of seem to set the journey for themselves and go from understanding one thing, and then you start to layer on insight as they go along and as it becomes available as well. And then, maybe it's like, to your point, not maybe, definitely also what's the effect? What did I want to get out of this campaign? Was it selling stuff? Was it shifting brand impact and so on? And that becomes the next thing that they'll work with us or a different partner to create this kind of insight stack to somehow get some sense out of all this disjointed media scenario that we're in at the moment.
Stéphane, if I can come to you, just kind of following them on this measurement theme then that we're now kind of getting into. And with an EU perspective, I guess, as kind of where you sit geographically, the industry bodies or the JICs and the bodies that represent audience measurement and currencies, do you think they've done enough to drive the total video, total TV agenda forwards? What are you seeing from a European perspective?
So we're covering a lot of things. I was at the Beat retreat yesterday as well, and listened carefully to what has been said. It was really interesting. First of all, when we talk about total video, what do we mean by that? Is it all kinds of videos or not? I don't think all kinds of videos are equal, to be honest. What we believe in total video is, or TV is premium content, mostly long form content, distributed either in linear or on demand, whatever the device, right? So taking this into consideration, and what is the status at the moment? We just issued our new TV Key Facts. It's been 29 years. It was issued last week. It's a piece of research we conduct every year across the world. And linear TV is still very high in terms of viewing time. We talk about 3 hours, 40 minutes on average per day. Still super high. Do we have, of course, other sources of consumptions? Of course. VOD is on the rise, video is on the rise. We also conducted a survey on CTVs across Europe. Basically, what is the pattern? What do they do? What do they consume? The first thing they consume is SVOD, followed by AVOD, BVOD, and YouTube. Here in Europe, if you look at it from a US perspective, you see that the AVOD and BVOD is much higher. So it shows the path for the future. There will be more and more video consumption, definitely using CTV or other sources, maybe operators, platforms. We'll see that.
Yes, please.
Of course. But I think that's the thing. And coming back to your JIC question, is measurement at the heart of our main topics? Of course it is. We need to measure what's going on the linear channel and what incremental reach we can get through the additional BVOD or AVOD viewing time that we can get. So there are many alternatives at the moment. There's no silver bullet, unfortunately, across Europe, but there are different alternatives. So the C-Flight alternative coming from the US, now being implemented here by ITV and others. It's the same in other countries like in Germany, for instance. But there are other alternatives. We saw the Swedish alternative. There is some alternatives as well in trying to coincide panel and and survey in Holland as well. So I think it's really at the heart of it. It's not easy to do it, but what is key as well is we don't want everything to be put into the bucket of video. We need to make sure that we are comparing apples and apples and not apples and oranges. We were, I think it's Dave this morning when I was interviewing Netflix, and Jeremy was saying there was this discussion in Sweden a week ago where basically Google pulled out of the cross-screen measurement system that has been put together because they didn't want to be compared with a 50-second spot, which is basically what we wanted as an industry, because they were pushing the 2-second one. So we need to compare things that are comparable. It's really important.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because TV is video, but not all video is TV.
Yes.
So what do we think might be that common point of assessment? Is it the attention agenda that's kind of emerging right now? Where do we think we should be kind of calling an apple as an apple versus another?
I think we should,
another fruit.
Just to say one thing, I think we need to be really careful about determining what quality is, because we work in the industry. I think a user determines the quality of something. And I think if someone just says, oh, I spent £1 million on a piece of content, actually a user will go, yeah, but I've watched this TikTok video and I have more attachment to that than that £1 million piece of content. And I think we need to be very aware of that. And then the other component of that is there's only 3 things and Vicky will know more about this, that an advertiser should ever really concern themselves when it comes to any piece of content. Is it brand safety? Does it meet my ethical stance that I have as a company? And do I know it's actually hit a human being, right? And the rest of it, I could say, no offence, but I think Celebrity Get Me Out of Here is terrible TV, but 13 million people think it's great TV. But I don't.
You heard it here
but
first,
that's,
everybody.
Yeah, but that's just, it's personal choice, right? And I think we have to be very careful about saying this content is better than that content and that content is better than that content.
And I think it's interesting the way that we've defined television as being, professional content. So does that mean, for example, Mr. Beast, super creator on YouTube, long-form content, watched hugely on the big screen? Is that not television content? And I think I always look, if I'm thinking about future trends, I look to the youngest audiences and that we can measure with confidence. And of all the impacts on television, linear television in the UK, only 2% go to 16/24s. So we have to look at what they're doing if they're not part of that linear world. And it goes beyond what you would normally call professional quality television. Yeah. It is in that space. It is in the super creators. It's in Twitch. It's in things like TikTok. And what's really interesting with Twitch and TikTok, it blends what you think of an advert and content. And it's really hard as a sort of, so we kind of can't even agree on what video means and then think about what an advertisement looks like on TikTok. It is really difficult to pull that apart. So we must have a broad church when it comes to understanding what is important for brands. And I think, just to finish that up, when I'm looking to build a campaign, and I look at the brief, and I have to make sure that there's budgets, and there's splits, and there's audience understanding, and we have to make sure that at every level we're understanding what the role for channel is. What is that? Twitch, TikTok, linear, I'm a celebrity, whatever I'm buying, what role does it have on that plan? And is it fulfilling? And is it moving towards that ultimate objective, which is, the business outcomes? And if we're not clear on that, then you sort of have to ask questions about how our definitions work.
You have to look at the data, right? So we heard it in the panel, I think early this morning, YouTube is being consumed on our platforms massively, right? Yeah. So if people have 20 minutes to spend, they're not going to engage into a new series on Netflix. They're not going to engage and make the effort of finding something new. They say, I have 20 minutes, I'm going to snack YouTube. Yeah. It's massive, massive use of YouTube on the big screen. So that's video.
Yeah,
that's TV.
I think the biggest thing is that big screen is still the centre of it all, and I think that's what people seem to think, that everyone's trying to have a go at the legacy of TV. Well, actually, no. TV is going to be the biggest platform in the world, and it's going to continue to be. And I think that just means that the evolution is the change of how that TV is being consumed, and it could be that I think social media is going to get even stronger on that TV as well, because once smart TVs actually drift into the kids' room. At the moment, mainly the big smart TV is in the lounge, But actually, most kids who are teenagers have a TV in their room, and that.
Not in my house.
Well,
Yeah, but I think it's very complementary. You know, we had we're talking with advertisers, of course, constantly trying to bring them to, to Europe and to bring them to our inventory, of course, across Europe. And constantly asking the question, where does it start? Where does it end? What is TV? What about, earned media, paid versus paid media? Where is social? I think it's a complement of everything.
Yeah.
So you have linear TV, you will get, very high reach in a very limited period of time, 70% of the population on average, I would say, within one day. Then you get, a chunk of your plan. And then you need to get for incremental reach. Where do I find my light viewers? Well, obviously, at the moment, thanks to measurement, they are more looking on things on VOD, whether it's SVOD or FAST or whatever. But on top of that, do you need social media? I consider TikTok not being TV, but more as a social media. Does it matter? Of course it does. Do the influencers have a say? Do they have an impact? Of course they do. But it's more this constant discussion between paid media and earned media. It needs to be a right mix between the different aspects, and then it makes a good plan. Then it's successful.
I think what Vicky said was the most important thing. If you're looking at a media plan, and you can do this, we're an omni-channel platform. We buy across all different realms of the sort of the video landscape on a programmatic level. And one of the biggest things that we're probably going to look to do next year more than anything is you're right, is you're running linear. We can understand your incremental reach on CTV compared to your linear. We can then do the display, we can then do online video. Unfortunately, the wall gardens that are social media don't allow us to have that access. But we can then create sequential messaging, sequential dynamic creative, and all of these aspects. And I think the key is understanding that total video isn't going to be you're going to understand everything individually always, or especially in the short term, but understanding you can utilize them all very effectively to get the outcomes you want as an advertiser. And I think that's sort of the next stage of what we're trying to get to.
So thinking back that this is a conference about, or an event about advertising, and so total video has an advertising kind of red thread running through it. How is this panel feeling about Netflix coming into the fray, Disney soon too? But really important example, I think, is kind of TikTok being on your TV screen as well. So bringing a new advertising experience into what is, a foreign environment to a certain extent for that content. How are we feeling about kind of new advertising in new TV?
I think it's great, but what it does, it will add to the fragmentation, not only in terms of ad technology, but in terms of platforms. We have so much fragmentation in content. We have so much fragmentation in platforms. If you look at the billing, the recommendation engines, the advertising engines, and it's all fragmented. So if we want to come to the finish line a bit faster, some of this fragmentation needs to go. So there will be winners and losers. People have to lose to clean up this space for the sake of all of us, probably.
Yeah, I mean, as a research company, it's kind of interesting because it's more problems to solve, if you like. But you get further and further away from ever being able to have just everything sit on a panel, right? So I think it's been talked about earlier on as well, but you've got, again, it was Radu, I think I'm kind of becoming a bit of a follower of her, but she was talking about you need panel data and big data. And that's definitely where it's going, because the more these things launch, the more you have to work out a way, if they're not going to necessarily allow a measurement in or not join one of the jigs or whatever, you have to find a way to solve the problem. You have to make sense out of the incomplete data. And
I think we have to acknowledge it's an imperfect world we live in, and you're right, we have to make decisions that blend panels, that blend probabilistic, deterministic data sets, but that's not easy. Like Dovetail's taken so long because it's really hard to get panel data and ad server data to talk to each other in a meaningful way. So it is hard, but I think at each step, it's better to acknowledge what you don't know, and sort of be true to that and go, right, okay, I don't know that, but I have this data set over here, I have this data set. It's like a tapestry, that's the way I've described it, and of different data sets that you draw on, and there's no one answer, because there's not one place that has everything. So you used, and I go back to IPA touchpoints, where the single source, which helps guide, at a top level, lots of really interesting media planning decisions, because then it adds mode and adds mood, and it brings some context into the planning. It's not just a binary kind of have you seen or have you not seen. It thinks about someone's emotional state, whether they're travelling to work, what they're doing whilst they're consuming that video content as well, which really helps bring another layer and dimension into the world of building a successful plan.
Yeah, I think people like Netflix and you've got Disney Plus are going to come, and you're going to get even more sort of US-based platforms that are going to be able to come over here because of their deeper pockets. And I think one of the biggest changes will be you will have global companies. Previously, we've only really had like people like the social media and the Googles. You're now going to get truly easy to enter markets for a global company like a Netflix and a Disney because of, first of all, their brand names, but also they now own their content. And let's be fair, TV is all about the content. So now you're going to get someone like a Disney who's going to go, well, actually, I can just launch, once I get the platform right, I can launch in every single market. And then I can go and do a partnership with a Procter & Gamble, a Unilever, who have global sort of ideas of how they want to buy. And then they're like, well, I can sell it programmatically as well. That in itself will change the game. And I think in a good thing, because I think when you have an evolution of anything, there is that inflection point where someone comes along which really shakes the tree. And that's where sort of some of the natural incumbents have to then move forward quicker than they would like to, I think.
But, I would like just to come back a little bit on, what's going on also in Europe at the moment. That's a little bit the essence of the company that I represent, being an alliance of different players, very strong at local level. ITV, they're launching ITV X in a couple of days. We saw Kelly. We are representing ITV from a pan-European perspective. We do that with our own group, RTL, M6, RTL in Germany, RTL in Holland, working with you guys as well for addressable TV coming up. Yep. So I think, yes, we are looking at a huge acceleration of offer like Netflix and Disney Plus. But I can tell you, the local guys that we represent are really taking advantage as well of this total video. They are investing so much money at the same time in order to provide a great experience to the consumers and to bring to the advertisers as well in terms of touch points and the advertising industry. What we're building on top is basically taking those local champions and connecting them at European level in order to have, to work eye to eye level with what you were saying, global discussions, etc. Are we here? I don't think we are fully in,
Agreed.
But it's coming, and we need to be prepared. And that's basically what we do at RTL Alliance, connecting the dots with the local champions to have a bigger say in order to make it happen at a global level.
I'm personally really looking forward to the fact that we've got ITVX and obviously the success of Future 4, Channel 4 on because that's going to help fill that gap of the fact that we've got such a low viewing younger audiences. Because I think we all here because we recognise the power of like linear and what it can do for brands. We just need to make sure it retains that relevance, and I think pushing it into the equivalent of streaming platforms is going to really help drive the relevance for the younger audiences that then maybe wouldn't have chosen to view it in the same way on a linear schedule.
And don't forget one thing. I think TV is not just only about genre or dramas or fiction. I think TV, from where I come from, television, it's about many, many things. We are governed by, we have rules, we have a legislation that allows us and asks us to bring different types of genres and content to the industry. So the local content is very, very important. If you're looking at what is being used at the moment and what is being watched from a linear perspective, it's still a vast majority of news. I don't see news on Netflix. I don't see news on Disney Plus. This is what we are doing. And on top,
sports.
Yeah, and sports and live programs and of course fiction and big entertainment shows. That's what TV is all about.
I
it's
think
not just about.
I think the problem is everyone's a little bit in the defensive. And I think actually there's a place for everyone in the market because the market's growing. There's more money in TV than ever before. So I think actually it's much more understanding, okay, what is my place within that ecosystem? We do it, so on average, I provide through our CTV campaigns 30%. I'm not sales pitching it, I'm just example of what it is. When you run a linear campaign, we do 30% incremental reach on 18 to 34-year-olds, right? Now that doesn't mean We can't do that unless you have, you get the 4 quartiles of TV reach. That only works in the 4th quartile. The 3 weeks before that, when it runs, it is TV going exactly like that. And then suddenly, and everyone knows this, the reach curve of TV. So there's no way you're ever going to have a world where you're not going to have all of these components. I think the difference is just how do we bring those components together? And that is why we're here and probably why we'll have a job.
I think that's a nice way to wrap. So look, I really enjoyed this therapy session. I feel better. I hope you do as well. I kind of got out. There's a lot about Total TV and Total Video that's about principles, actually, interoperability and integration and collaboration, as well as the kind of more technical aspects that are going to make it work as well. Maybe got a minute and one question. I'm just going to put it out there. I can't actually see anybody, but if somebody does have one question to throw to my panel of luminaries, we can go for that. Otherwise,
everyone is very hungry.
Yeah, okay then. Paul, shut up. We're going to go for lunch. Thank you very much, and we'll see you this afternoon. Thank you. Amazing.